This video is supported by patrons like you. If you'd like to become a patron, please head over to patreon.com/Khalil Shabazz, where you can make a one-time donation or a monthly donation starting at $1.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish.
Real quick, before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know that this video was originally longer than 30 minutes. This video was more than 30 minutes long, so I've been editing it and cutting it down. I'm not quite there yet, so this video will be either part 1 of 2 or part 1 of 3. But I want to give you guys a little heads up so you can follow along properly. Just pay special attention to the titles and you'll be good to go. Now, let's get into the information.
But I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there's not enough troops in the army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the Negro race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, and into our churches.
Hi guys, Khalil Shabazz, author of the book, Why Do Black People Religiously Vote Democrat? Welcome to part 2 of my investigation of the party switch narrative. As discussed in the previous video, part 1, the party switch narrative is very convoluted. Therefore, to investigate it thoroughly, I had to separate that one narrative over several different chapters. This particular chapter will only deal with the narrative regarding the Dixiecrats joining the Republican Party. I will not be discussing the narrative regarding Richard Nixon, Barry Goldwater, and the Southern Strategy. That will be in the next video. Now let's get into it. Now, when we're dealing with unfamiliar information, it's always prudent to define our terms. So, Dixiecrat. What is a Dixiecrat? In short, a Dixiecrat is a Southern Democrat politician who vehemently opposed integration. These were Southern Democrats who wanted to maintain segregation. They stood for Jim Crow and they believed in the black codes. So the National Democrat Party starting to add civil rights to the plank, or rather to the overall Democrat platform, these guys vehemently objected to that addition. And they expressed their dislike or their disdain by actually establishing what is now known as the States' Rights Democrat Party, aka the Dixiecrats. Now, for a little bit more context, Dixiecrat, the term Dixiecrat is an amalgamation of two different words, Dixie and Democrat. Dixie represents the slave South. It's derived from Mason-Dixon, or you may have heard of the Mason-Dixon line. The Mason-Dixon line was somewhat of a divider from the southern slave states versus the northern free states. So anything below the Mason-Dixon line, for the most part, was a slave state, whereas everything above the Mason-Dixon line was a free state. So the term Dixie is used to refer to the Old South, the former slave states, the former Confederacy. So, of course, these southern states before the Civil War were all blue. These were all slave states. Of course, you should know by now, if you follow my work, that it was the Democrats who were pro-slavery. If you follow my work, that it was the Democrats who were pro-slavery. If you follow my work, that it was the Democrats who were pro-slavery. So these southern states were all blue, right? And then during Reconstruction, they turned red. And then after Reconstruction, thanks to the Ku Klux Klan, they all reverted back to being blue. Which is why all of these southern states at this point in time in history are all blue, which is also why all of these southern politicians are all pro-segregation, they're pro-Jim Crow, they're pro-black codes, and this explains why they are so vehemently against adding a civil rights plank to the Democrat Party's platform. Now, with that context, saying that the parties switched, or saying that the Democrat Party, or at least the Dixiecrat faction, the racist faction of the Democrat Party, joined the Republican Party, it makes sense to put that out there because you aren't just killing 2 birds with 1 stone, you're killing actually 3. Number 1, you're explaining how the South turned from a solid blue to currently a solid red. For 2, you're absolving the Democrat Party, or at least you're explaining away the racist history of the Democrat Party, allowing them to say, well, that's not us anymore. Look, we took that racist faction, the Dixiecrats, and kicked them out, and they are now a part of the Republican Party. Which brings us to the third bird that you're killing with 1 stone. you're now able to label the Republican Party as the racist party because they absorbed the racist Dixiecrats. That gives today's Democrat the ability to proudly proclaim that they are a Democrat, right? Because the racist past of the Democrats, that's been extracted and inserted into an entirely different party. That's why the Republican parties are racist, and that's why the Democrat Party cares for black people. But is that true?
Let's find out.
Well, to find out, I had to go back to the beginning. The Dixiecrats came into existence in 1948, so that's where we will begin. In 1948, Harry S. Truman was the Democrat nominee for president. Truman was the vice president for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, our only president to win 4 presidential elections. At the beginning of his 4th term, FDR passed away, and the Vice President Truman actually stepped in to complete that particular term. Now, here's where things get interesting.
Linda, listen, Linda.
At the 1948 Democrat National Convention, prior to bringing Truman out for him to give his acceptance speech, him accepting the nomination, Herbert Humphrey gave what was to become a very historical speech. Within that speech, Herbert Humphrey announced that the Democrat Party will now add a civil rights plank to the Democrat platform.
To those who say, my friends, to those who say that we are rushing this issue of civil rights, I say to them, we are 172 years late. To those who say that this civil rights program is an infringement on states' rights, I say this: the time has arrived in America for the Democratic Party to get out of the shadows of states' rights and to walk forthrightly into the bright sunshine of human rights. My good friends, I ask my party, I ask the Democratic Party to march down the high road of progressive democracy. I ask this convention to say in unmistakable terms that we proudly hail and we courageously support our president and leader, Harry Truman, in his great fight for civil rights in America.
And at that very moment, all hell broke loose. Approximately 600 people, everyone who supported segregation, keeping segregation on the books, got up and walked out.
And we bid you goodbye.
Delegates from Alabama and Mississippi stormed out of the convention hall in protest after the party adopted a civil rights platform supporting an anti-lynching law, the desegregation of the military, equal opportunity for employment, and the elimination of poll taxes, which prevented poor people from voting.
This included all of the Alabama delegates, half of the Mississippi delegates, delegates from all of the other southern states, the lower South as well as the upper South, supporters, people who made donations, anyone who was there that was pro-segregation and totally was against the Democrat Party adding integration to the Democrat platform, they got up, walked out.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
And so the brand new States' Rights Democratic Party is holding their convention in Alabama. They nominated South Carolina Democrat Governor Strom Thurmond to be their presidential nominee.
But I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there's not enough troops in the army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the Negro race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, and into our churches.
Get out of the pool!
And Fielding Wright, the Democrat governor for Mississippi, to be his vice president. Now you have to understand that their goal wasn't to win the presidency, right? That was totally unrealistic. That wasn't their goal. What their goal was to simply secure 127 electoral votes, right? If they could isolate those southern states, the lower South and the upper South, every state that was a part of the former Confederacy, right, that was pro-segregation, if they could isolate those states, win the electoral votes from those states, they could more or less hold the election hostage. If they could do that, the election would then go to the House of Representatives, whereas they have some bargaining power. They have a little bit of leverage. And so regardless of which party, obviously they will prefer the Democrats, but if either one of those parties was to agree to their segregationist demands, that's who they would pledge those electoral votes to, thus giving that particular party, that particular person, the presidency. Now, the biggest thing that had to be in place in order for them to actually accomplish that, they couldn't allow Truman to be on the ballot on any of those southern states, right? They did not want to split the Democrat vote. If they could remove Truman or not even have him appear on the ballot, then those who traditionally vote Democrat would obviously see States' Rights Democrat Party versus the Republican. That would be their only choice. Therefore, they would vote for Strom Thurmond and Fairleigh Wright. So it was very important for them to not appear as a third party option. That was the plan. Now, how did it play out?
Linda.
Now, obviously, Truman goes on to win the election. This is where, that famous photograph of when Truman holds up the newspaper. Dewey defeats Truman. Everyone had their bets on Dewey, right? Truman really didn't finish FDR's term on a high note. And you also had the huge split with the Dixiecrats and the Democrat Party. Now, the Dixiecrats actually succeeded in not having Truman appear on the ballot in 4 southern states. Those 4 states, the Dixiecrats actually won. The 4 southern states that the Dixiecrats actually won was South Carolina, of course, Strom Thurmond's state, Mississippi, Fairleigh Wright's state, Louisiana, and Alabama. In all of the other states, they simply appeared as a third party option in which they lost miserably to Truman. Clearly, they fell very short of their 127 electoral vote goal. With the 39 votes, obviously not enough to hold the election hostage, obviously not enough to have any type of negotiating leverage, and Truman goes on to win the presidency. Now, here's the point of contention.
Listen, Linda.
What happened to the Dixiecrats after the 1948 election? Now, while you're pondering that very specific question, I know that your natural inclination is to say, well, they joined the Republican Party, right? Well, did they? Tune in to part 2 of the Dixiecrat narrative, where I really do answer the question, did the Dixiecrats actually join the Republican Party? I name names, I give dates, I name specific states of every politician from 1948 to 1960. You do not want to miss it. I want to take this time right now to thank my patrons. I really, really do appreciate your support. My level 1, my level 2. Look, I can't do it without you guys supporting me through this endeavor. I want to let you guys know I really, really do appreciate your support, and I will not disappoint you. Special shout out to my level 3 supporters, my man Sean Eric. He's been down with me from the absolute beginning of this project. Look, sir, you know me. We see each other virtually every day, and I just want to make sure that I get across my thanks and my appreciation for your continued support. And also, I want to welcome one of my new level 3 supporters, Shantae Thompson. Look, I really, really appreciate you coming on board. This information will blow your mind, and I really do appreciate you and your financial donation. I can't do it without you. Look, I'm trying to come out with this book by July 4th, and your donation really does help me get there. And lastly, I want to shout out my level 5 supporter, my man Akash Kiwala. Look, sir, what else is there to say? I really appreciate your support, your moral and your financial. Look, I really appreciate it. This information will consistently blow your mind, and I can't wait to talk to you about what's coming next. There's a lot that's coming down the pike, and your donation is definitely helping me get to that next level. I really do appreciate it, my man Akash Kiwala.